Welcome back to Norfolk, to the Rain Laboratory, here on the first sunny day we've had in, I can't remember. This week we are looking at the Akai EIE Pro. Looks good. Let's have a look.
The all-metal construction makes for a weighty chunk of an interface. It is absolutely solid, big too, a two-hander, about a half rack wide and 2.5U tall. Makes you wonder how great it would look on a rack shelf, or whether you could run two together. There's an idea. Anyway, the unit is immediately impressive. The front panel has a load of knobs, sockets, and there are these cool flick switches along with the fabulously glowing VU meters. It has a great vintage vibe going on, and ticks all the right boxes for people who like their audio gear a bit touchy-feely. The EIE Pro is a straightforward 4 in-out analog box with none of that messing around with superfluous digital options. On the front you've got 4 combo inputs, all switchable from mic line to guitar and with individual gain knobs, the only compromise being that phantom power is per pair. You get a single headphone output with level and monitoring selection, and a monitoring knob which mixes from purely input to purely output, and finally a master level control for outputs 1 and 2. You can't help but be drawn to the lovely VU meters, and we'll have a look at how useful these are later on. On the back you get 4 TRS jack outputs and 4 inserts, one for each channel. And if you don't know, these can be used for routing the inputs to external sound processors like a compressor before recording. It's a very powerful feature. MIDI in-out is a nice addition, and probably as an afterthought you get a bank of 3 USB sockets. This is something so useful that it's bonkers we don't see these on every interface, so nice one there, Akai. The installation is simple enough, using quite an old school installer, and one that unusually announces the creators of the driver, Ploytech, who write USB audio drivers for all sorts of boxes. Plug in the USB cable, and with a slight twinge of disappointment we also have to plug in the wall-wart power supply. The installer finishes and asks for a reboot. There's no mixer or routing software, just a simple control panel offering a choice of buffer sizes. The numbers are a little alarming. The reported output buffer size seems rather large, and we'll come back to this later. As is the fashion with these sorts of interfaces, it comes with some bundled recording software, and in this case you get 2, Cubase 5 Lite and Ableton Live Lite. That's pretty generous, and both are cool bits of software that will get you recording and writing in no time. For now, let's plug in a guitar and see what happens. Who doesn't love the bouncing needle of a VU meter? Far more exciting than a clip LED. You can select on the front panel what you want to meter, in, out, 1 and 2 or 3 and 4. Plug the guitar in and start adjusting the gain, and the meters will tell you exactly what's going on. Push it too far and they will light up red, indicating distortion. They are pretty much on the money as well. Doing some test recordings, the meters flashing red completely corresponded to recorded distortion. Not the good kind of distortion either, this is digital distortion, which is definitely bad. Switch the meters to outputs and you can see if the output from your software is too hot. There's something about VU meters that play into the idealised notion of sound recording. You can't help but love it, and whether they are actually useful to you or not, they go a long way to setting this interface apart from the crowd. Right, let's get back to latency and check the performance against our tests and some other interfaces. This is where those buffer and latency numbers give us a bit of a cause for concern. Talking about latency and performance comparisons between interfaces is confusing and awkward at best, and it's very easy to get bogged down in numbers when what's important is what goes on in use. We've put together a video all about latency, so please go and have a look at that for a more in-depth view as to what it's all about. Back to the Akai, the problem is that there seems to be a really large output latency when compared to other interfaces. At 256 samples, which is the usual standard setting to run interfaces at, I would expect a round-trip latency, so that's in and back out again, of 10 to 20 milliseconds. With the Akai, it's about 40. And you don't get under 20 milliseconds until you drop down to 128 samples. And you don't get down to 10 milliseconds until you drop to the absolute lowest buffer sizes. I got in touch with Ploytech to see if I could find out why there is such a big output buffer. They said it was there as a sort of safety buffer to ensure that people with slow computers could still use the interface without any fear of clicks or pops. Then they provided me with a newer driver that promptly cut the round-trip latency in half. Let's see if we can capture what that feels like. just feels a bit sluggish. Sluggish. Not too bad, just feels a bit sluggish. Aha, that's better. So, on the original driver, running at 256 samples, the real-time response of playing something like drums was pretty sluggish. With the new driver, the response was much tighter, noticeably so, and perfect when you dropped to 128 or 48 samples. So that's a relief. For a moment there, I thought the driver performance was going to make this interface really difficult to recommend. Nice. But no, it does pretty well with the right drivers. Ploytech's attitude towards the drivers seems pretty odd to me. Obviously you want your interface to work right, but surely part of that is being able to be playable in real time at a reasonable buffer size. Playback performance is fine, but for recording while monitoring effects or playing VST instruments, the performance of the original drivers was very poor. Maybe a safety switch in the control panel to add a safety buffer to those who need it would be a better solution, rather than a whole separate driver that isn't even downloadable from Akai, and I had to ask the driver creators for them directly. If you find that you need the new drivers, we're using version 2.9.42, then feel free to drop me a line at raincomputers.co.uk and I'll send them to you. Of course, there's always the option to use direct monitoring when recording guitar or vocals, which is how most audio interfaces encourage you to get around the software latency issues altogether. There's a monitor nub on the front where you can set a mix between direct sound and software playback. It would be handy if you could set this per channel rather than globally, but you can't have everything. The layout, weight and physicality of the box is excellent. It's really clear and easy to see what's going on. Personally, I'd like to sort of squash it into a bit more of an angled desktop console form factor, but then that's just me. The metal construction, the old school switches, the VU meters lend it an air of professionalism that other interfaces at this price level lack. And insert points and the USB hub really do set it apart from the crowd. The driver performance with the new drivers is on a par with quality interfaces like the Native Instruments Complete Audio 6. And with a street price of £200, including 2 bits of decent recording software, the EIE Pro should be a contender.
Yeah, so the weighty EIE Pro from Akai Professional, it's a great little box. It's a great big box. Loving this, of course. Love this. Knobs are okay, loving the switches, good feel to them. Love the USB hub on the back. There's a lot to like about this interface. Driver performance is not fantastic, but it's certainly good enough, and shouldn't trouble most people, I shouldn't think. And at £200, wow, that's a lot of metal for your money. So yeah, I like it. See you next time.